Christ is risen again.
Truly, he is risen.
Good to see you once again. We had some private chat before we started this one at the end of Deepika. Yeah, so as we discussed last time, we've been in this whatever context of things in heaven and on earth. I thought it's more appropriate to look at something else, not the Philokalia. We can return to the Philokalia perhaps after Pentecost. For the time being, I think it's more appropriate to go back to St. Ephrem's hymns on paradise. Of course, we won't be able to read too much, but we'll do our best. Last time we were in this setting, we went through the first stanza of the first hymn. Well, in the translation of the famous scholar of Syriac studies, Sebastian Brock. And I think we found out some stuff that is, from my viewpoint, fundamental for whatever our Christian journey. It's not just a matter of how to approach the scriptures, but what to seek in life and how to do that. Does anyone want to do some summary of the previous discussion, what we found out, or whatever stood out for you in regard to the first stanza?
The discussion we had about maps being a version of the story that we're trying to tell as being not the reality of the story that we're telling, that dysfunction that exists when we look at the road map, literally, when we're traveling and we look at the countryside around us. There's much more in the countryside around us, and that's what this seems to be driving at. We're going to have a look at what the meaning of the paradise that we were given in the garden and the various elements of it, the hidden stuff.
Yeah, it's like comparing a bidimensional, or how it's pronounced, map. You open whatever the map, and it's it doesn't have depth. But then if you go for a three-dimensional map, or you just look out, you see the depth of things, the thickness of things, whatever, many more details. A map is a reductionist model. And as I understood this stanza in St. Ephrem, what he says is that when we are interested in getting to paradise, whatever that might mean, because it doesn't mean what at face value we think it does, like the place of delight or whatever it's called, the garden, vineyard, or whatever we fancy, Those are metaphors. Those are images that point to a reality that actually transcends all those analogies. So when we set out to travel towards paradise, which we haven't discovered yet what it means for St. Ephrem, we need a map, a road map. And this roadmap, according to him, is the book of Genesis, especially chapters 2 and 3. And we understand, even though he doesn't use the word map there, we understand that he is aware of the fact that what Genesis presents is actually a reductionist model. All the models are reductionist. They are simplifications of reality, not the reality itself. If you want an accurate, this is something that cosmologists discuss. If you want an accurate map of the universe, you need a computer of which the size is the universe and can give you the exact details of the universe. Therefore, it's still something that would escape any imagination, not only the immediate grasp of things that we might have at this stage. Yeah. You need the mind of God in order to get that map. Yeah. Well, something similar happens here, as you said already, Martin. Thank you. For St. Ephrem, yes, it's important to have a roadmap, to have a map that shows us the whatever landmarks of our journey towards paradise and into paradise, the garden. But we need to be aware of the fact that this is just, a matter of getting some pointers. The pointers are the actual journey. You have to walk in a certain way. Yeah, the pointers are useful because they show you the way, but it's up to you to walk on the path and how you walk on the path. And there's something else that I pointed out there in the discussion. The fact that for St. Ephrem isn't only a matter of traveling towards paradise and reading the map, as it were, Genesis, what he calls the law here. There's another element, to be guided by someone who's been there. In this case, Moses, the prophet, the teacher of the Hebrews, who instructs the travelers, if you like, to use that metaphor again, as to how to walk towards this garden, which we see through the means of the tale, the map. But the map has depth that aren't obvious at face value. It's a treasure house of revelation. There are glorious things that lay hidden there. And we only have some pointers. We need the wisdom of Moses to guide us. So it's like a triangle, a trilateral, if you like, triadic method. It's the seeker. It's even more complex than that. It's the seeker, it's Moses the guide, tour guide. It's the map, Genesis, and the goal, paradise. Yeah. So it's a complex method where you actually have to go by the rules in order to win the contest. Yeah. To use another analogy. Any other points about this first stanza? Something we learn about Genesis itself. It might look like a simple, straightforward story narrative, but in reality, it's wondrous by its many plans, glorious for what lies hidden. Yeah, in other words, Ephrem doesn't read Genesis literally. Yeah, and we should brace for the unexpected. Anyway, let's move on to the second stanza and see something about the method. How is Ephrem suggesting that we proceed towards paradise? Yeah, and he talks about himself. It's like, when you read this stanza and the next one, it's as though you read what? I took my stand halfway between awe and love, or joyfully did I embark on the tale of paradise. Does it ring a familiar bell? Like Dante in the Renaissance, Dante traveling to various regions of reality, paradise, hell. Yeah. If you begin, the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, something very similar. Yeah. Talks about, his own path towards, his own, let's say, travel adventures. Something similar here. So, and this is a 4th century author. Very interesting from my viewpoint, because it shows that you can actually speak about these things without doing the work yourself. Yeah. For instance, if I would talk to you now about the famous El Camino, you know, the famous walk, you know, to Santiago de Compostela in Spain, which is one of the things that I hear people talking about, you know, and we've seen documentaries and that, we've never been there. Uh, I won't be able to say anything about that because I haven't walked the walk.
Not experienced.
Yeah. And so trustworthy guides are those who walked the walk, who went there, yeah, and not third hand or fourth hand, whatever accounts. So we are talking about someone who actually, well, I don't know, maybe he went there, he reached the end of the journey. But what matters is that we are talking about someone who is interested in walking the path and interested in reading that map correctly. Okay, so let's go through the second stanza. Says Ephrem, I took my stand halfway between awe and love. A yearning for paradise invited me to explore it, but awe at its majesty restrained me from my search. With wisdom, however, I reconciled the two. I revered what lay hidden and meditated on what was revealed. The aim of my search was to gain profit. The aim of my silence was to find succor, shelter, harbor, haven. Okay, so what does this evoke to you? What does he say here?
The thing that comes to me is coming from two sources. And one is the reflection on the Orthodox prayer life from Matthew the Poor.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is a study on silence by Robert Sardello. And the connecting point is there is as a seeker, it's important that we acknowledge that there is something and that the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, will be given to us as a guide to be able to discover that. And it releases us from this is me speaking now, it releases me from the tension of not knowing, of admitting ignorance, of being able to be an open mind and receptive to the message. So the distinction between awe and love is the thing that's parallel with that for me in this.
Yeah. What you brought in the conversation another element, let's call it an element of the method, you know, the guidance of the Holy Spirit, which for the time being the poet Ephrem didn't mention. Yeah, it may well
But is
serve
not
us.
Moses the person that had that guidance? Is not Moses the person that had that guidance from the Spirit?
Well, yeah, but I'm trying to stick to the text. So when we try to analyze the text, we try to stick as closely as possible to it. Of course, all sorts of connections can be made. You made two connections. I made the other one with Dante, and so on and so forth. You know, so this isn't illegitimate talk. But when it comes to the actual text, we need to pay more attention to what the actual or the author has to say, you know. So the guidance of Moses, yes, he mentioned it or alluded to it in the first stanza, but for some reason he turns to a different or slightly different topic now, which has to do more with, let's look again, has to do less with the guidance received from either the Spirit directly or the Spirit through Moses, and more to do with something else. What's this something else?
Exploring.
Yeah. It's his feelings. It's his inner universe. his psyche. Yeah, and what he describes is a bit of an internal crisis, if you like, or if not a crisis, a bit of a tension that builds within the poet when he considers this journey, this travel to paradise. Yeah, can you identify pointers to or hints at that crisis, or at least a tension within the poet?
That revering what lay hidden, but meditating on what was revealed. So acknowledging that he has an insight into something and meditating on that, and acknowledging and revering what isn't revealed to him. So again, there's an aspect of humility that I sense in that.
Yeah. But that's not necessarily the tension. That's more like the solution. I think if we want to capture what I call a crisis or a tension within the poet, we should look at the first verses before the full stop, the first full stop. And I believe that those verses capture the sense of a tension. So
the standing halfway you're referring to?
You have to explain more.
In relation to what you've just said, it's the first two lines. I took my stand halfway between awe and love. So awe was the unknown stuff, I thought, and love was what was revealed to him, to have something to pin it to.
Yeah, but you are jumping again to the second half of the stanza.
Okay.
To the solution.
I'll practice silence now.
No. It's no. We are trying to grapple with this passage, with this stanza, which is obviously very rich and complex.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, indeed. The two, let's call them emotions or responses of awe and love. That's what captures the problem, and the fact that he stands halfway shows that he cannot decide what to do. So this is like which is something that happens to me very often. Ottilia knows this, and she's annoyed by my incapacity to choose something, to take
decisions,
make a decision this way, that way. What to do, and I like freezing. I stand halfway. Yeah. In the case of St. Ephrem, it's not a matter of let's go to whatever, buy beer, or let's go to buy bread. In the case of Ephrem, the direction is obvious. He knows where he wants to go. But the very idea of paradise elicits two kinds of responses. And these responses, which he feels very strongly, he experiences very strongly, tear him apart. So he's frozen, standing halfway. And on the one hand, there's this attitude of awe. On the other hand, the attitude of love. Now, let's try to identify in the next 3-4 lines what resonates with awe and what resonates with love.
oh, must be the mystery and love.
Well, where's the mystery? I don't see the word mystery there. Where's the mystery? But the last two verses so before the full stop, obviously it's about awe, and yearning is another word for love. So we have the freezing moment. He stands halfway. He knows where to go. He wants to go to paradise. But he cannot decide, should I go or shouldn't I? Why does he experience this confusion? It's because of the two different emotions he experiences, awe and love. And now he explains why he feels those two things simultaneously, or why the idea of traveling towards paradise elicited this kind of contradictory response, this tension within him. Yeah. So on the one hand, he wants to go there. He loves paradise. And he explains immediately, love as yearning. I desire paradise. I want to be there. I want to be part of it. I want that, let's say, fellowship with God, which is what actually paradise is about. And be in the presence of the glorious ones, the martyrs. If you read down the track, you'll see that the population of the heavenly paradise, at least, is made up of martyrs. Yeah. He loves to be there in the presence of God, in the presence of the glorious ones. He yearns for that fellowship. Yeah. And this yearning, this love invites me to explore, to go, to walk the path, if you like, and be there and explore what paradise has to offer, its geography, so to speak. Yeah. That's the first response. And this is what actually motivated him from the outset to begin this whole discussion. How should I be there? And how should I get there? And this is because love or yearning invites me, invites him. But then the other emotion he feels, he experiences, or is stirred by a sense of the majesty of paradise. Yeah? Or as Martin said, the unknown, or the mystery, says Ottilia. Yeah? This unknown appears to the poet as something majestic, something that is otherworldly. It doesn't fit in, let's say, our logical canon or cultural canon. It's something that definitely I don't comprehend. It's a powerful mystery, this unknown. Yeah. Powerful, majestic, tremendous, maybe we could use this word, mysterium tremendum, yeah, tremendous mystery, frightening mystery.
Fear and respect at the same time.
Yeah. And this is what leads the poet to restrain, to prudence. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Well, the wisdom thing.
Well, that's part of the solution. Let's see if we got this right. Yeah. So after the first full stop comes the solution. But did we get this right? The tension.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Does it make sense what I'm saying? So
yes. Yeah.
we have a real tension, a real crisis there. Should I go or should I not? Should I go or should I stay? Yeah. This is the idea. And he cannot decide, not immediately, because the two emotions are equally strong. Awe and love, fear, respect, whatever, awe and love or yearning. And he weighs, or he explains, why the two very extreme feelings. Because they are both present in his psyche, in his mind, and they both have a ground. They aren't irrational. They have a ground. There's something real to them, and these emotions are responses to different aspects of what he calls paradise. Yeah. So love, yearning, paradise entices the explorer, the traveler. I want to be there. I know that I want to be there. It's the response to all my questions and my aspirations. I want to be there. I love to be there. On the other hand, there's this sense of, well, this is an impenetrable mystery. It's an unknown that doesn't fit the bill of my usual categories. Yeah. Hence, I need to be prudent. And it's like, when you give to different orders, commandments to like your computer or machine, uh, it freezes because it can't do two opposite things simultaneously. Yeah, it happened to me many times in the past, especially when there were those MS whatever things in PCs and all that initially, in the 90s and stuff. Anyway, let's see how he sorts out, or how he tries to solve this tension, because he wants to make a decision, and this is where he turns to Alan's wisdom. Yeah, let's read again. With wisdom, however, I reconcile the two. I revered what lay hidden and meditated on what was revealed. The aim of my search was to gain profit. The aim of my silence was to find succor, shelter, haven. Go for it, Alan.
Well, as I read it, it appears that the wisdom statement refers back to the opening of that stanza. I took my stand halfway. At first, I thought that opening statement was, I'm confused, I don't know what to do, because I've got these tensions running and it's all so scary. On the other hand, he says, I took my stand. He made a purposeful decision. I took my stand halfway. With wisdom, I reconcile the two. I see those two sentences being linked.
Oh, they are definitely.
Yeah.
The second one responds to the first.
Yeah. And it is because of wisdom that he took his stand halfway. And he explains that halfwayness by saying, I revered what was hidden. I couldn't understand it, but I just set it aside, as it were, and left it to remain hidden. It's not something I can jump into at the moment. But then what was given to me, I could chew on, I could meditate upon, because it has been revealed. So I can move forward with this dilemma. So in that sense, wisdom does provide a way through. And then he expands it by saying, this was my search, was to gain from this. But the silence, that's a new thing that's introduced into his thinking.
Yeah.
I need to be silent before what was hidden, and yet that will also provide me help and comfort and succor. I can rest in the presence of the divine, even though I can't understand it. But what has been given to me, I can chew on.
Yeah. So according to you, there's no tension, there's no crisis in the first part of the stanza. It's just an introduction to the solution which he introduces by the word wisdom. Well, yeah, in a certain way you can say that. But what troubles me is a word that you avoided, however. That, however, which comes right after wisdom, shows that this is where he begins to look for a solution. So, of course, we are free to look at this thing as suitable to us. But from my viewpoint, and let's say on a closer reading to the text, that, however, shows that there's a new kind of thread, a new idea emerging. First, from my viewpoint, before that line with however, he describes the tension he experiences, the two, let's say, opposite emotions, and he explains why he has two opposite emotions. And from this viewpoint, yes, there's a process of discernment there. Wisdom is involved in that, but only insofar as discernment helps him to make sense of why do I feel, I don't know, conflicted by this. I know where I want to be. I know where I want to go. I even have the roadmap and the guide, but I'm still reluctant. Why this restraint? So there's a process of discernment there. But from my viewpoint, that it's still that first part of the stanza still captures a moment of tension, and he wants to make the reader aware of the fact that what comes after this, at least in hindsight, reading more of these hymns than what we have on the screen, he needs to make aware, or he wants to make the reader aware of the fact that this all is about, let's say, reconstruction. Only insofar as you reconstruct yourself, you can travel. You cannot proceed, you cannot just begin to climb up the mountain, because paradise for him is a mountain, actually, as we see further down, without proper training and without realizing what your limitations are, what your problems are. In this case, this conflicting sense of, I want to be there, but I know that I should take baby steps, for example. And only insofar as we conquer, let's say, the inner mountain, we are able to travel and climb up the mountain of paradise. So that's, I repeat, a process of discernment which has to do with the pedagogy of, let's say, the spiritual journey. And one of the aspects of this pedagogy is the poet, as a teacher, helps us understand that we need to identify whatever problems we have before we begin to play the mountaineers without any experience in mountaineering beforehand. Or we try to, I don't know, swim across the Tasman Sea without having any experience in swimming long distances. Yeah, that's the idea. So identify your problems, he says, in a way. And I have identified mine. I know where I want to go. Love, yearning, push me to undertake the trip. I even have the roadmap and a guide. But there's something that causes me to be reluctant, to practice restraint, to be prudent. And this is the realization that I am incompatible. This is what awe is. Awe at its majesty means I'm not there. I'm not on the level. How can I travel to a place with which I am incompatible? Yeah. So the tension is there from my viewpoint, and the moment of crisis, you can call it a clash of emotions, but it's still processed. He says you can't actually undertake the trip without realizing the parameters, internal, personal parameters of the journey, or the requirements, personal requirements entailed by undertaking this trip. And then he goes on, the next step in this process of discernment and realization. So making recourse to the same wisdom that helped him make sense of what the problem was. The same wisdom, I give you that, teaches him how to handle the two things, which he doesn't want to extinguish. Hence the confusion that we might have between the two parts of the stanza, because the words are the same. And what he offers as a solution seems to be practically a repetition of the clash of emotions in the first part of the stanza. But in reality, what he offers after, however, is the solution, where discernment teaches how to handle the two different emotions and the causes of those two emotions. They don't disappear. Awe and love are still there. He travels moved by love and yearning, but he travels prudently, humbly, you said, Martin, knowing very well that he isn't on the level. He hasn't done whatever was necessary to train for this trip. And now he turns. Yeah, go on, Martin.
I just want to say that what you're doing now is exactly the tension that I feel, the discomfort I feel between these two. And it relates to your pedagogy. It's the way you teach. You don't come along and give us the information, which is the lazy way and the way that I would prefer. I'd just like to sit here and listen to your exegesis and close the thing and say, I had a really good morning. But what you're getting me is to experience the discomfort myself of being in these two states. I want the treasure, but I don't want to work for it. You are making me work for it. And you did that this morning when you asked us to reflect on how does this reading, this lectionary this morning, relate to the Paschal Revolution. And I sit there and I think, but I did some work on this, but I can't answer your question. I went into the Orthodox spring, and I saw the continuity that you had between the Sundays and so on. But that tension was really revealed, and I then referred it to resolve it for me then. I thought it's your teaching method, and it's the goad, like Paul experienced. We are being goaded to seek this. And to now, my explanation of what that is about is because we are inherently lazy. And this is hard-won material. So thank you for goading me and making me feel so bloody uncomfortable.
No, and this is really, yeah. This is why I'm unpopular, because I stopped years ago when I stumbled on what you could call patristic wisdom. I stopped going linear, A to B to C to whatever, That's not how things work in life. And what we find in the patristic contemplation or interpretation of any given item in heaven and on earth is not linear. It's not bullet point. And this actually makes me very unpopular with my students and believers out there. People want clear-cut responses. I'm not here to give any. I can just share with you what I learned from these real sages of the Christian tradition in terms of approaching whatever item we want to grapple with. But I'm not here to give you any responses, just to point you to certain problems and ways of handling them. And Ephrem is perhaps the best teacher we can get. Now, I'm not talking about something that I just stumbled the other day on. Started to read Ephrem in the second half of the 90s. Yeah. Anyway, and that's what he does. Yeah. So I'm trying. Actually, I'm a monkey. I'm imitating what I see him doing. Yeah. And what he does is actually help us realize that there are some issues there without which, or without the realization of which, we can't accomplish anything. There's no reconstruction without a previous deconstruction. Yeah. He could just say, okay, go to paradise. You are Orthodox. You have the bullet points in your pocket, and now you can travel. You are well equipped to travel. He says, there's nothing as easy as that. Yeah.
No
And
pain, no gain.
well, that's it. That's precisely. And this is the teaching of the law. Have you heard the law teaching us in bullet point theology? Parables, hints, allusions, sarcasm, irony. Yeah, irony. I mean, sometimes he's really annoying. Most times, rather, you can see why people who were impatient actually put him on a cross. He was too annoying.
Yeah. Yes.
But there's no way of gaining wisdom otherwise. Yeah, wisdom isn't something that you can just collect from. You ask Chat GPT and gives you 3 bullet points, and there you have it. That's wisdom. As I said earlier, which was out of record, I think. Yeah, now it's on the record. What we get from these modern tools is just computer rendered artificial picture. Just to the acronym. Okay. So from my viewpoint, yes, there's a connection between the two halves of the stanza, but that, however, gives me the sense of something else. Wisdom operates throughout. Wisdom, discernment, they go hand in hand, and they help Ephrem to analyze his responses to the prospect of this journey. He wants to do it, but he feels, I don't know, reluctant. Yeah, freezing halfway. And that's not a decision. He realizes that he actually stands halfway. Now he wants to make sense why he is frozen in the middle of the road. That's how I read it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Alan is right, and it's all about the solutions of wisdom. But from my viewpoint, however, when you use however, that shows a turn of the conversation, a turn of your discourse. And from my viewpoint, this, however, shows that the same process of wisely discerning the situation. Now you move towards reconciling them. Look at this. He doesn't do away with one of the two emotions. They are still there, and the grounds for which he feels conflicted are still there. On the one hand, I want to have that fellowship with God and the saints. On the other hand, I know I'm not on the level, or of the paradise's majesty overwhelms me. I'm not on the level. Yeah. So we don't hear yet the word transformation. The fact that I need to advance personally, progress personally, in order to do the jog or the trip to paradise, to the top of the mountain. But the same process of wisdom and discernment shows how these two emotions can be bridged, reconciled, he says. And we have already heard from both of you how's that happening. Yeah? On the one hand, awe becomes an instrument inviting humble prudent reverence, towards things that escape one's grasp. On the other hand, love becomes an instrument that leads to contemplation or meditation on what was revealed, And in the words of the previous stanza, that's the few spoken words and the many plans. The few spoken words, what's revealed. The many plans, that's the unknown. That's the majesty that terrifies Ephrem. So I revered the many plans. I meditated on the few words in the words of the previous stanza. I still have my aims. What I want is to gain profit, which means what? To find myself there, in the presence of God, in the presence of the saints, to find shelter, succor, harbor with them. But I conduct my search silently. You'll see that this pair of words, search and silence, are very characteristic for Ephrem. We find them everywhere in his writings. This semester, I worked a lot with my students on his hymns on faith. And these words are everywhere. What kind of search shall we conduct when we approach the mysteries of God, like the origin of the Son from the Father, or the human birth of the Son? What kind of investigation shall we conduct? And he says it for us here, only insofar as we aim to gain some profit, which is a spiritual profit in this case. And we should conduct our search silently, which is the most appropriate response to a mystery taken seriously. Where instead of trying to smash the mystery to transform it in bullet point theology, we articulate the mystery, as a Romanian philosopher would say, Lucian Blaga. We articulate the mystery as mystery. We just draw contours. These are the contours of the mystery. And God willing, when we progress with the hymns on Paradise, we'll see that for Ephrem, this mystery is revealed beyond a bidimensional map, where that's a map, you open the map, and there you have it. But that's still a reductionist, a simplistic representation of reality. That's Genesis. But then when you see, when you juxtapose the map and the reality it points to, you see that it has depths, heights, length, width, and so on and so forth. That reality does no longer fit in the simplistic representation which the map is. And then you are really overwhelmed by awe. And the best you can do is contemplate the contours of the content of the mystery and leave that content unexplained. So that's how he reconciles the two. He acknowledges the incapacity of the mind to grapple with mysteries. And while at some point he says, okay, so I've got the map, I know where to go. I made sense of Genesis, I know where to go. But then the map itself has layers. And when you juxtapose the map and the reality it points to, you realize that the map itself, regardless of how many layers it has, it's still an incomplete, simplistic representation of that reality. And then you are terrified. And the only response that you have is, well, I chew what I can, what I can, to use Alan's word. Yeah, this is the map. I'll be chewing that. And together with the map, given the symbolic relationship between signs and realities, between the map and paradise, yeah, I would be able to chew some aspects of that reality. But what I realize is that paradise is a mountain. It can't be treated as though it's a bidimensional playing field. And then when you progress through the hymns on paradise, you realize that for Ephrem, the mountain, the paradisal mountain, actually engulfs the universe. The whole universe is within the mountain. And then you realize, as I said earlier, that you need a computer of which the size is the universe itself. And then bullet point theology is of no help. The Nicene creeds or not at your disposal. So this is it.
It's exciting, and I like the beginning of the third stanza, because with joy I face the situation, and really, Father, that is how I feel now. I've expressed the truth for me and got it out of me, so now I can just lie back and enjoy the process.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We need to be to allow ourselves to be led by hand. Yeah. And in this case, who takes us by hand is Ephrem, whose insight is amazing. Okay, thank you for walking together. God bless us all.
Thanks, Tyrone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.